this is about liberty, everybody. And what's the most important thing in your life? It's not the money. It's not the property. It's not whether you can have an AR-15 or not. It's liberty. Because if you don't have liberty, you're not going to get to keep any of the rest of it. I had an attorney one time. He was so mad at one of these town halls that was up in the Gold Country, and he was so mad. He's got this $5 bill and he's waving it over his head, and he says, "It has nothing to do with what you're talking about. We just need to get rid of the Federal Reserve." And he says, "What do you think about the money?" And I said, "I don't care about the money." And he says, "Well, why not?" I said, "Because I don't have liberty, and without liberty, I don't get to keep the money. I make money, but I give it all to Sacramento. What I don't give to Sacramento, I give to the federal government. What I don't give to them, my county takes. And by the time I'm done, if I get a sick animal, that's the end of the money anyway. I need liberty so that I can say what happens to my property and say what happens to my money and have a chance of hanging on to them and use them for the things that I think are important and that my neighbors think are important or that my community thinks is important." So this is about nothing but liberty. There are people here that are thinking, what about the roads? How are we going to build a road in Jefferson? How are we going to build a hospital? How are we going to keep a jail open in Jefferson? And my response to that, the easy answer is this. There are 49 states in the United States of America that do not have the name California, and every single one of them has roads and hospitals and jails and sheriffs and city police and water and power and trash collectors. Good Lord, how do they all do it and they're not California? How on earth do people figure out their lives without having the name California? And when we form the state of Jefferson, by the way, we won't be the smallest state. We'll be something like 47th or 46th or 45th. We won't be the least populous state. We'll be 45th or 46th, something like that. And if Terry is, if we keep turning Terry loose, we'll have 40 counties out of California anyway. We'll be number 3 in population and land area. You know, the state of California is always talking about how we're the 9th largest economy in the world. Why would you want to leave the 9th largest economy in the world? Well, I remember when I was younger, we used to be the 3rd largest economy in the world. And then we were the 4th and then the 5th. And, you know, I don't know, a saying comes to me, it's not climbing up the ladder of success, it's starting at the top and climbing down. So if we keep on going, what's the logical progression of that? In fact, I said to my county administrators, just a couple of weeks ago, I stood in front of them and I'm approaching them to join our lawsuit as a plaintiff, and I asked them a simple question. And I was a deputy sheriff full-time until just recently, and I had to get a better job. You know, I hate to say that. I was on the dope interdiction team all summer, and we did our best and made no impact whatsoever. There's so much and just so few of us and so much of it. And I had to leave that job because I couldn't afford to get shot at for minimum wage anymore. I mean, that's just the truth. I needed more money to feed my family, so I went back to what I did most of my life, which is flying airplanes. And I hate that. I hate that about myself. I hate that I had to do that. I hate that I had to abandon my community because a cop in my community makes about $20 an hour. You know, that's too bad. I mean, that's life, though, and it's just reality. But anyway, I stood in front of my county board of supervisors, and I asked them, you tell me one metric that's up in this county. In other words, one thing that's improving and not getting worse. Is it drug abuse? No. Is it violent crime? No. Nonviolent crime, white-collar crime, homelessness. Are rents going down or up? Is property more achievable for most people or less achievable? Is employment up or down? Do we have more people that are productive or less? Do we have more people on welfare or less? Every single metric in our rural counties is down. Every single one. And if somebody knows one that isn't, please tell me what it is, because I need some good news here. There isn't one. And then I asked them this, what's your plan? Do you have a plan? Any plan? Have you got any idea how you can reverse course on what I've just said? How can we make homelessness better instead of worse? How can we make alcohol abuse better instead of worse? How can we get it to where people who are in despair stop beating the heck out of their wives and children? How can we get them to quit spending their money on dope? How can we get them a job? How can we attract industry? How can we do any of those things, any of them? If you got a plan, tell me what it is. I will stop what I'm doing. I'll drop Jefferson and I'll help you do it. Because you're in government, you know more than I do, obviously, because you're in government, right? Politicians know everything. And you know, they look back at you, and I've asked this of United States congressmen, I've asked United States senators, I've asked county supervisors, mayors, police chiefs, county sheriffs, the same question. If you have, state senators too, if you have any plan to reverse course in rural communities and rural counties and even small counties, tell me what it is. And you know what? They look at you, and I'm not kidding. They say, I got nothing for you. I got nothing. That's where we are. Now, you know, I'm not a glass is half empty kind of guy. Actually, this is the good news part of the meeting. We can fix this. We can. And you know what? We're the only ones that can fix it. They can't do it. They're limited. They're limited because the power of the purse is always yanking on them. They don't serve the people, they serve the money. You follow the money and you'll find a politician at the end of it. And you know, quite frankly, that's the nature of the beast. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means that there is a framework that's been instituted in this state that was not what the founders of this state envisioned. And the last century and a half has made it worse and worse and worse, so that counties, by virtue of the fact that the state declares you are simply political machines that are part of the state and you better do what we say or else. And they actually go to county supervisor school in Sacramento. And they spend about 5 minutes on good government, and they spend the rest of the time talking about the loot and where to get more. And you know what they're coming up with next? And my supervisor just went to this school in the last election cycle. Service taxes. When you call a plumber, going to be a tax. Going to be a tax on all services. And what the state representative said, and that's where the real money is. Because you know what? The state knows you got a nickel left in your jeans somewhere. And they got the big metal detector and they're looking for it and they're going to find it. Unless we stop them, and we can. Now, how did we get here? What happened to us? What happened that put us in this position? Because the founders of this state did not put us here. First of all, we did it to ourselves. If you want to know whose fault all this is, go in your bathroom, look in the mirror. This is my fault. Because I had one job as a citizen, and that was to secure liberty for my posterity. That was my job. Excuse me. Let me turn this off. That's a pilot thing, by the way. Sorry about that. I thought I turned this off before. I guess I didn't, because I'm technologically inept. Okay, well, it won't turn off, so I'll just ignore it. Okay, anyway, this is our own fault because we weren't paying attention. We were raising kids and going to school and, driving cars and raising animals and going to soccer games and 4-H and county fairs. And I know I inherited about 10 4-H projects gone wrong and raised them until they died of old age or ate them, one or the other. So I know all about that. But what we should have been doing is paying attention and showing up, right? And we didn't do that. We didn't show up. And so government was left to its own device. And we got what we deserved. But we can fix that because we are the people. So why do we have a state here? Why did the founders propose that we have a state? To secure liberty. And how do we know that? And by the way, I can prove all this. We know from the preamble to the California Constitution. We, the people of the state of California, grateful to Almighty God for our freedom, that to secure and perpetuate its blessings, we establish this Constitution. Why do we have a state of California? Secure freedom. How are we doing? Okay, but we still have the Constitution, we still have that framework, and we still have that mandate, and it's up to us to change it. Why is it up to us? Because Article 2, Section 1 of the California Constitution says that all just political powers derive from the people. Government is instituted for their good and their benefit. And if government fails to serve the people, it is their duty and their responsibility to alter or reform government as the public good demands. We have a constitutional mandate to do what we're doing. Some supervisors have said to me, well, I can't do that. I'm a constitutional officer of the state of California. I said, well, in that case, you better do it because it's your responsibility to do it. It's your duty to do it. I've sworn the oath of office 3 times in my life. I take that very seriously. I mean, really. So the first time I swore the oath to the state of California, I walked out of the room and I thought, God, I just swore an oath to a document I never read. I'd never read the California Constitution. I had no idea what was in it. And I felt really bad about that. So I went home and read it. Whew. That was a job. That thing is 110,000 words long. It has stuff in it about school busing and when a reporter has to disclose its sources. I mean, it's the most ridiculous document you've ever read in your life, but it has some stuff in it that can help us. And that's where we're going now. We're going to help ourselves because no one else will help us. None of the political parties will help us. No corporations will help us. There is no one that's going to jump out of the closet and say, I'm going to help you people do this. No one. You're it. You and people like you all across this state. We are going to fund this lawsuit. We're not asking any money from any city, nor will we accept any. We're not asking any money from any county, nor will we accept any. Because this is kind of like when you go to your dad and you say, Dad, I really want a shiny bike just like all the other kids have. And your dad has two ways of going. He says, I'll buy you that bike. And 2 weeks later, it's laying out in the mud behind the tree because you don't care about it and you don't respect it. Or he does like my dad did. He says, man, that's a great idea. As soon as you get the money, let me know and I'll help you pick one out. And boy, I took good care of that bike because I paid for it. And you know, we paid for liberty too, or at least our forefathers did, right? With their lives, their treasure, and their sacred honor. They paid for the liberty we squandered. Whoops. But here's how we fix it. So we thought about this for a long time and we thought, all right, well, there's only one way to do this. Can we go to Washington, D.C. and say, you better fix the state of California? Get real. No way. I mean, we don't even have the power to say whether we get mustard and ketchup at the same time on our hamburger, much less to tell Washington, D.C. how to behave. And I don't care who's president. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant because we're irrelevant. We're irrelevant because our vote is irrelevant because we have no representation. We are irrelevant in the state of California. The government in Sacramento can do anything they want, any day they want, with regard to anything they want to do it, and you cannot stop them because we have no representation in the state legislature. How can I prove that? 38% of the land mass of the state of California has 6 state-level representatives, and the other 52% has 114. Los Angeles County has 11 state senators. Senate District 1, that senator has 11 counties. There are a total of 15 state senators that govern Los Angeles County and the surrounding counties that they share a part of. 51% of the representation in California lies from the Los Angeles County line south to the Mexican border. 51%, that's a majority. That is the majority. We lose. We lost without even opening our mouth. The SRA fire fee. Los Angeles State Senator passed a bill to tax people out of his district. His constituents don't pay the tax. What a great thing. Wouldn't it be cool if you could get elected to public office and then you could impose taxes but not on your own people? Everybody else has to pay but your people don't. You'd never get in trouble, right, from your voters because they don't have to pay. And you don't really care what anybody else thinks because they can't even send you an email. If you send that guy an email, it bounces back and he says, I don't represent you, call your own guy. And your own guy says, well, I didn't vote for it. You know, that happens all the time. The latest batch of gun bills. Anthony Portantino, who was, by the way, his claim to fame, he was the art director on the Grizzly Adams TV show. And that catapulted him to being a state senator. And he doesn't think when you're in Starbucks drinking your coffee, he says one should not have to see a weapon in plain sight when one's drinking one's latte. But when you're walking out behind your house near Anderson or out by Red Bluff, and you're out in those trails, and there are mountain lions out there. There might not be in Pasadena, but there are out there. Wouldn't it be kind of cool if you could defend yourself? And in fact, isn't that one of the inalienable rights? And in fact, isn't that Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution that says that you were born free and independent beings, and as such, you enjoy certain inalienable rights? Among those are the ability to pursue, possess, and protect your property. Now, if your life isn't your property, I don't know what is. But in this state, you have the ability to protect your property only if you ask the government's permission and get it. Because remember, when you ask permission, it can be denied. In fact, it is denied in most of the counties of California, except for a very few that are shall issue, and even those. I mean, you have to ask the sheriff's permission. Yes, I asked him and he gave it to me. Yeah, cool, so I'm lucky. But what if you live in San Bernardino? You can't ask that sheriff because he'll say no. So am I more equal than people who get chased by mountain lions in San Bernardino? No. I just happen to have a good sheriff this time. And that could change with the next election. Okay, so what we did was we decided to fix our own backyards. We decided to lobby and legislate and raise hell and raise commotion until finally we had constitutional thinkers in our own county. By and large, we did pretty good, I'd say. You know, we have 21 counties where by hook or crook we gained declarations, either by boards of supervisors, by overwhelming signatures of the people, combinations thereof, and then we approached the California legislature. After, I don't know, when are you in here? Okay, I would say hundreds of thousands of phone calls, conservatively, tens upon tens of thousands of emails petitioning the California legislature to at least give us a fair hearing for our demands. The answer was this. The silence was deafening. We did not get one legislator, not even the ones who claim to support us, not even the ones who claim to serve us, not even the one guy who ran on the promise that if he were elected by his county and the surrounding counties, his promise was that he would introduce Jefferson legislation. He wasn't in assembly 15 minutes before that promise went straight down the toilet. And he had a lot of good excuses, but I don't know where I come from. Thanks, Coop, I forgot that part. Where I come from, a promise isn't, you're not allowed to have an excuse. You either keep your word or you don't. It's your word. You either die trying or don't say it to start with. That's how I was raised. Anyway, so we found out that we have no support for that. Zero, none, nada, nine yet, zilch. So what do we do now? We decided to sue them. So we're going to sue the state of California on behalf of the 21 counties of Jefferson, in fact, on behalf of the 58 counties of California, for lack of representation and dilution of vote. The founders of this state instituted a form of government where every county had a state senator, and every county had an assemblyman at a rate of 1 for 2,500 people. That was pretty good. And that happened in 1848, or 1850, I'm sorry. And it went all the way through 1862 when population began to grow. At that point, the government in the state of California, in Sacramento or Benicia, wherever the capital was at that point, they said, it is inconvenient for us to increase the size of our legislature to match big population increases. So what we're going to do is we're going to limit our legislature to 40 senators and 80 assembly people. And then what will happen is, as counties grow or are added, then we still have enough senators so that each county can have a senator, but population districts for assembly will just grow. Well, that was okay for about another 10 years. We stayed about 2,500, 2,700, 3,000, then we went to 5,000, then 7,000. But obviously, by about 1920, we were up in the 100,000. And now all of a sudden we have 58 counties, we only have 40 senators. So in 1926, the people of the state of California, led by the California Farm Bureau Federation, authored Prop 28. And Prop 28 was called the Federal Plan of Government. In other words, the people of California realized that this cap in representation wasn't really a good thing. They didn't know how to get around the cap, but they knew what to do with it. And so they passed Prop 28 by an overwhelming majority vote. And Prop 28 said that each county will have a state senator, except for the very smallest counties like Alpine, it has 1,100 people and so on, but no more than 3 counties, and all 3 of those counties have to be contiguous. They have to touch. And so there will be equal representation, roughly, in the state senate for counties, and then populations will be divided up into 80 districts, and that will be the assembly. And that worked from 1926 until 1964. And up until 1964, California had less than $5 billion in long-term debt. You know how much we have now? What they'll admit is $1.2 trillion. $1.2 trillion. You know what $1 trillion is? That's $1,000 billion. That's a lot of money. Well, we had less than 5 billion. Even 5 billion is a lot of money, but it's not for a state that has 40 million people in it. But 1.2 trillion, and really it's probably closer to 2 trillion because we have unfunded liabilities and things like that. And I'm not going to get into that because Steve knows more about that than I do. But anyway, so now we're in a position where we have what we need. California works. There are checks and balances. Essentially, rural counties ran the Senate, urban counties ran the Assembly. And the result was people had to get along and they had to think these things out. And they couldn't do stupid stuff because the other body would say no to it. And California did very well. That was when we were the third largest economy in the world. Now the United States Supreme Court, and I'm sure there was a lot of progressive help in that opinion, comes around and says in 3 different cases, no, you can't do that. And I know most of you people know what those cases are, so if anybody really wants me to belabor that, just shoot your hand up and I'll talk to you afterwards. But the result of that was, number one, the first case, the federal government gave itself the right to intervene in state elections. Oh, have you ever read Article 3, Section 2 of the United States Constitution? The federal court has jurisdiction over all matters of equity and law under the Constitution. It's not allowed to change the Constitution, but the federal court gave itself the power over the states in the Baker case. And then in the Gray case, they thought, well, we made some mistakes in Baker, so we'll fix them in Gray. And this is actually what Warren said. He said, you know, we'll remedy these mistakes in the Gray case, and then states will be afraid to buck the court. So in Gray, they said, all state elections will be conducted by one man, one vote. Now, one man, one vote doesn't mean everybody gets a vote. It means all elections are conducted by districts, and those districts are not respective of county lines. They're strictly by population. What we had before was everybody got a vote, but I voted for my senator and you voted for yours. So we had districts formed, and they had to be X number of people, and there was only a certain ratio allowed in the population. It was like 12%, it could be as much as 14%, but there had to be this rule and that rule and so on. So then in Reynolds, and so now the court thought, well, we've done it now. We've changed the electoral process in the United States, and you know everything's cool now. And something like 30 court challenges later comes the Reynolds case. And here is where Chief Justice Earl Warren, who was the Attorney General of the state of California and the Governor of California, and by the way, he never read the California Constitution, and I can prove that. Never read it. Doesn't know what was in it. He says, I'm going to put the nail in the box. All state elections will be conducted under the supervision of the federal court. That was the end of the 9th and 10th Amendment. That was the end of state sovereignty. And when people asked Warren, what are you most proud of in your career? He didn't say civil rights. He didn't say school integration. He said, I forced 30 state legislatures to change the way they elected state officers. He was proud of the fact that he changed the Constitution without the amendment process and without the benefit of the approval of the people. So here we are now. We're going to sue for lack of representation. What are our grounds for the suit? The 14th Amendment, Section 2 says no state will abridge the representation of any voter in any way whatsoever. Uh-oh. That's a pretty big opening we have. Because we can prove that in 1879, a vote was worth 1. In fact, it was worth 1/2500th of an assembly district. Now that same vote is worth 1/2,000,000 of an assembly district. You could say that a county's vote was worth 1/58th of a county, state senator. Now it's 1/1,000,000th. California has the worst representative ratio in the United States. At 1 million per state senator and 500,000 per assembly person, we are 300% worse than state number 49. Texas is state number 49. They have a state senator for about every 300,000 and a state assemblyman for about every 150,000. We are 3 times worse. That's lack of representation. Another way we can prove it, and we have a lot of causes of action in the suit, and I'm not going to go through all of them because there are too many, but one other one that we have is this. we have an affidavit from a former assemblyman who says, I represented more than one county. Brian Daly, I think, has 7 counties. James Gallagher has 5 counties. So this assemblyman had like 3 counties under his belt. And he said that when I was an assemblyman, I would have to fail to represent one of my counties in order to represent the other counties because they have competing interests. In other words, one county wants this, the other county wants that. So I've got to screw one set of people in order to represent another set. That's not Republican government. That's not representation. We have other causes of action. I'm not going to go into them. But here's the deal. We're going to file the lawsuit next week. Yeah. Yeah, I just want to throw in a little thank you, Jesus, because this has been a long time coming. We've been working on this for a year and a half now, the lawsuit itself. The complaint is finished. We're going to file it next week, probably Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, something like that. We have a county government, and I'm not going to mention the name of the county because I don't want them to be pilloried before they're ready for it. We have a county government that has joined the lawsuit as a plaintiff. Okay. We're trying to get 2 more. We have some cities that have joined the lawsuit as plaintiffs. We have a county sheriff that has joined the lawsuit as a plaintiff. We have former legislators that have joined the lawsuit as plaintiffs.
Thank you, Mark.
No, please don't thank me. This is God's doing. I have nothing to do with this. I just have gums that flap. That's all I do. But here's the point. Now, this is the interesting part about the lawsuit, and this is how we're going to win it. There was a Supreme Court case, I think it was last year or the year before, and it was called Abbott versus Evenwell. And Susan Evenwell sued Governor Abbott in Texas, and she said, I'm not represented and it's wrong, and you're going to fix it, and I'm going to sue you. And so it was funny to me because I noticed that the Evenwell case went from federal court, and boom, it was in the Supreme Court, and I thought, how the hell did she do that? This takes years to go through circuit court and appeals and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, that case was before the Supremes. And unfortunately, Justice Scalia died. She might have won, but Scalia died. So anyway, we called the Abbott lawyers. We called the Evenwell lawyers and said, how in the heck did you guys do this? And they pointed out some sections of Title 28 of the U.S. Code. And here are the relevant sections. Any lack of representation case, any voter dilution case, demands a 3-judge panel. You applied your case to the federal magistrate, he has to apply to the chief magistrate, and then you appoint a 3-judge panel. That's very, very important. That is the linchpin to this case. Now, Title 28 also tells us that any result from any action, either civil or criminal, that involves a 3-judge panel, primary jurisdiction for the appeal, the United States Supreme Court. And guess what? Every action in court deserves an appeal. They have to take the case. You don't have to apply to the Supreme Court. They have the appeal, period. So it is extremely important when we file this case, and we did this intentionally. We might look like rednecks, but we actually have a plan here, folks. We planned this very carefully. We have to get that 3-judge panel. If we get the 3-judge panel, the Supreme Court will hear this case, no matter what. Because if we win, California is going to appeal, right? And if they win, we're going to appeal. And our appeal is guaranteed to go to the Supreme Court. Well, guess what just happened? Because there are 2 ways to lose in Supreme Court. There are 2 ways. If it's a tie, you lose. And you can lose by vote or you can lose by a tie. Well, we were waiting specifically, and that's why this seems like it's taken forever. It's like pulling teeth from an elephant. We waited until there was a 9th justice because we wanted to eliminate one opportunity for error. That's why this has taken so long. We've been sitting on this thing for 8 months waiting for another justice to be appointed. And that's the only reason we were waiting. We have that now. Okay, also, Justice Thomas, in the Evenwell case, he wrote a very interesting opinion. And this was funny because that case was decided unanimously. They found for the governor of Texas. They said Texas did not violate the Constitution because Susan Evenwell's mad. because states can do whatever they want. And people can't get mad about it. That's how the Constitution works. Well, Justice Thomas was very interesting because he wrote a dissent to that opinion. And he was joined by 3 others. This is the magic number. Thomas plus 3, that's 4, plus Gorsuch, there's 5. So we know we have 4 votes. We think we'll have Gorsuch, and here's why we think that. Because Thomas said, yes, while it's true the state of Texas did not violate Susan Evenwell's constitutional right to an unabridged vote, they are wrong in one sense. The majority is wrong in one sense, and that sense is that this court has been defending the principle of one man, one vote for 50 years and failing because no such right exists in the Constitution. That's what Clarence Thomas said. And he said in a 27-page contrary opinion to a unanimous decision that, and we welcome another representation case, we welcome a dilution of vote case, and here's how to win it. Just do this, this, and this. He laid out a trail of breadcrumbs. Now, go figure, that's what we're trying to do. I mean, that's our plan. So everything hinges on the 3-judge panel. Now, here's how you get the 3-judge panel. Sir Edmund Coke said in 1720, all courts are corrupt. He was right. They're not corrupt because people in them are bad people. They're corrupt because the judge knows who signs his paycheck. That's why you never sue the state in state court. You always try to get it in federal court because a different dude signs his paycheck. You know. Well, oddly enough, in federal court, guess what? There's a new sheriff in town, isn't there? So we have the ability to go to a federal court that's not tainted with bias towards the other side. And we know California throws a lot of political weight. That's just the truth. You know, a lot of things, folks, they're not good or bad. They're just the facts. And they're facts we have to deal with. And we have to deal with them correctly or we're going to lose. So we want this in federal court. We're going to get it there. But everything hangs on that 3-judge panel. How do we guarantee that? You know, I was just talking to Steve in the other room and to some other people outside, and, you know, I've been in court 1,000,000 times. There is more lying in court than any place else on the planet. You've never seen as much lying as you'll see in court. But here's what court is. Court is theater. Our attorneys are actors. Court is drama. And the more political weight, the more drama by, for, and from the people of the North State of Jefferson, the more of that we bring to the courtroom, the more chance we have of getting that 3-judge panel. That's why we had to have a county. Courts ignore people all the time. People don't mean anything in politics. You are just cannon fodder. They step on people constantly. But courts have a hard time ignoring governments. County governments, city governments, legitimate governments carry more weight in court. They shouldn't. It's wrong, but it's true. And once again, one thing that Robert Lee and Ulysses Grant, one quality they had and George Washington that was more important than any quality anyone could have besides humility. They saw the world as it was, not as they wished it would be. This is the world as it is. This is political theater and court is theater. So we need to bring some theater to the table. We need a county government, and we have that now. We need some city governments, and we have some, and we're actively seeking others. But time is of the essence. We're going to file this thing, and unfortunately, the 3-judge panel is either impaneled or not right at the beginning. We don't get to state our case before we find out. We have to walk into that room with enough political weight that they cannot ignore this cause of action and that they appoint the 3-judge panel. Here's what that 3-judge panel also does. We are prepared to indemnify, in other words, you folks are going to pay the fees if the state of California is awarded attorney fees because the magistrate finds the case frivolous and without merit. Because we can't find a county that has the backbone to join this case without an indemnity agreement. Okay, so we're going to give it to them. In other words, we're not fighting them. If they say we'll do it under this condition, we go okay. If they say, well, wait a minute, we want this too, we say okay. We're telling them whatever they want, we'll do, just sign on as plaintiffs to this lawsuit. We guarantee you won't be harmed. We guarantee you won't have to pay any fees. We're not going to ask any money from you. We're never going to ask any money from you. And we will provide an umbrella of liability protection to whatever government joins this case. And here's the reason why we can do it. Because if we're granted the 3-judge panel, at that point, according to the California Voting Rights Act and the Federal Voting Rights Act, the state loses the ability to ask for fees. The minute the judge said this case has merit, that's the end of the fee thing. They cannot attack us for fees once the case is found to have merit. If you have counties and cities and sheriffs and elected officials and former elected officials, you know, that's pretty hard to put together if you're just fooling around. And most people won't waste their time on that. So what we're thinking is, if we can bring some governments into the lawsuit as plaintiffs, we cannot miss. We'll get the 3-judge panel. If we get the 3-judge panel, we're going to the United States Supreme Court, and we're going to win. Because 4 justices have already told us that, haven't they? Now, I'm not telling you this is a sure thing. That would be foolish, and I'd be wrong. But it's a pretty darn good, the odds are pretty darn good. I would say with a high degree of probability we will win. Now, what will we win? That's a good question. Will we win Jefferson? No. Because it is unconstitutional to split a state judicially. It can't be done. Now, how can we sit in this room and claim to be constitutionalists, but we want to break the rules just in this one thing? Oh, we can't do that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to force a dramatic expansion in representation in the state of California for all the counties of California. And by the way, we're also trying to get the American Independent Party, because they don't have representation, the Republican Freedom Caucus, they don't have representation. They're close to joining the lawsuit. There's even a Green Party in Marin County that wants to join the lawsuit because they don't have representation. Well, I mean, look at it. They have 44,000 members. Even if they all lived in the same district and every single one of them voted the same way, they could never win an election. In California in 1879, there were 5 different parties that had seats in the California legislature. And it worked because they had to compromise. Now we have a monoparty. Everybody loses, really. Even Democrats lose. They just don't realize it yet. I mean, my sister's a socialist, and she said, well, I don't want that, I'm a socialist. And I said, well, don't you want a state senator for Sonoma County so you can do more commie stuff? And she said, this has got to be some kind of trick, right? I said, no. I mean, I don't begrudge you. If you want to do socialist things, don't you need representation to do those things? And she said, yeah, I guess we do. I said, well, there you go. But that's why California used to work, because we had equal representation in the Senate, and then we had that check and balance against the tyranny of the majority. And the founders even used that term, tyranny of the majority. That's where the majority, through a simple vote, can take your inalienable rights away, or anybody's. It doesn't matter who the minority is. Anytime 51% of the voters can take away the inalienable rights of the minority, that's tyranny. That isn't constitutional republic. In constitutional republic, the majority can never take the inalienable rights of the minority. Those things are above policy decisions. Are they in California? Nothing is above those people. Nothing. They will take anything they want, anytime they want, and they're doing it right now. So this court case, once again, this is the plan. This is the only plan that I know of to restore liberty in the state of California. Now, here's what I hope as a plaintiff. I am a plaintiff, and I have demanded things in my plaintiff's letter, in my demand letter. The county that just joined us, they have demanded some things of the state in their plaintiff letter. And here's what we demand. We demand that this state return to the model of government our founders envisioned for the people of the state of California in order to preserve our liberty. And that is a state senator for every county and 1 assemblyman for every 2,500 people. That's simple, right? And we know that'll work because it did work before. So here's what would happen. If we had an assembly person for every 2,500 people, we'd have about 14,000 of them in California. I'm not making that up. I mean, I can't do that in my head, but it's pretty close. It's 13,900 or something. So what would happen if we had 14,000 assembly people and 10 staffers for each one of them in Sacramento? They would need a new phone system, huh? And a taller building. And they need stronger floors because the weight of the egos had collapsed the building. So here's what we're hoping. There is no way to split a state judicially. We know that. But we're hoping for something else, and that is the court finds in our favor. Now, here are the legs of a federal lawsuit. You have to have asked for something. We did. We asked for redress of a grievance, our First Amendment right. We asked for more representation. What was the answer? Nada. Yet. So we got nothing. That created harm. Our lives have been harmed because we have no representation. The Orville Dam almost collapsed. The state knew about it. They did nothing. 200,000 people had to leave their homes. I've lost my Second Amendment rights. Fish and Game is trying to grab my water rights. I've been harmed. You've been harmed. Everybody's been harmed. I could stand here for 5 hours telling you how you've been harmed, and I don't even live here, but you know that better than I do. So there is harm. Now, here's the third part. There has to be a remedy for the harm, or all this is for nothing. If the court finds that this is not justicatable, in other words, yes, you're right, you don't have representation, yes, you've been harmed, that's obvious to a blind man, but I'm sorry, there is no remedy for that, so act of God, bye-bye, glad you won your case, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya. But here's the easy part. What's the remedy for lack of representation? More representation. So the only open question is, and here's the fight we're in, we need to get the state of California off the 40 senator and 80 assemblyman dime. The minute they abandon that position, the barn door is wide open and we drive a tank through it. One for $2,500, that's what I'm asking for. One of the counties that we have, their demand, they haven't agreed to join the lawsuit yet, but their initial demand is one assemblyman for $30,000. That's 1,000 assembly people or more, 1,200 assembly people. Even that would break the bank. So what's going to happen, we hope? California will come to us and say, fellas, this ain't happening. 14,000 of these people, God, you'd even make us crazy. We're not doing it. What else can we do? There's only one other remedy. Split the state so that you have smaller divisions of government. You know, if we split the state and we had 1.4 to 6 million people and we let, Merced County in and Stanislaus and some of the others, we would still only have about 150 assembly people at one for 2,500. We'd only have 25 senators. Very manageable, very governable. And according to the state's legislative analyst's office, we own 87% of the resources that the former state of California used to have. Wow. I mean, all we have to do is go back to being what we've always been, which is resource counties. You know, nobody's talking about cutting down all the trees. And it was some Fox reporter said, you just want to cut down all the trees and kill all the fish and get all the guns. And I said, you know, you're sitting in my front yard, it's a forest, what does it look like? Oh, it's beautiful here. I said, now imagine this place if I cut down all the trees and killed every living thing, but I had a pile of guns in the backyard. And he says, that's pretty stupid, huh? And I said, yeah. So what I would like when you talk to people, first start out your conversation with the people that you come across and say, the first thing I want to say is, let's play by adult rules. If something sounds so stupid it can't be true, it probably isn't. How are roads funded now? That's how we'd fund roads in Jefferson. Most federal highway money goes to Caltrans. That's federal money. Well, in Jefferson, we'd have an Office of State Engineer, and he would take that money and he would divvy it up amongst the counties according to how many state responsibility roads they had and how many miles of road. And he would offer expertise and equipment and people if they asked for it. What about education? We have a minimum standard because we want our kids to get into college, but I shouldn't be able to tell you in Shasta County how to educate your children. That's for you to decide in your local school board. We should have a state office of education to make sure everybody does good enough to get into Harvard if that's what they want, but he should wait for you to ask for advice if you need it and if you want it. And if there's any grant money, the state office of education divvies it up so it can be spent wisely. I mean, State Office of Mining and Engineering, same thing. But we're going to have an Office of Constitutional Compliance. Any bill that comes before our legislature, there will be an elected officer called the Secretary of Constitutional Compliance. If that bill does not pass muster constitutionally, it'll be returned immediately to its author or scrapped altogether. I mean, how can you do better than that? You know, another thing is, if you have one representative for every 2,500 people, what are lobbyists going to do? We're going to suck the money out of the politics, because how can you approach a guy when he knows his neighbors are actually paying attention? How can you bribe that guy? And if you do, they'll probably catch you at it. And guess what? 2,500 people would be pretty easy to get rid of a crook, wouldn't it? How easy is it to get rid of a crook? Oh, I don't know. Let's pick Kevin De Leon. He's the president pro tem of the Senate. He represents the district in MacArthur Park. I know exactly where that is. I grew up there and I've spent a lot of time there. That's where all the heroin addicts throw their needles on the ground and shoot each other after dark. But he doesn't live in that district. He's committing a felony right now. He almost got caught up in the Calderon investigation, but a Democratic attorney general turned a blind eye. They won't prosecute the guy. Governor Jerry Brown, he uses state employees to prospect for oil on his own family's ranch. And he said later, well, no, any Californian can do that. Well, I called up there and they wouldn't do it for me. That's a crime. It's misuse of public personnel and public funds. It's a felony, actually. Was he prosecuted? No, because the same party owns the attorney general, IO, it's off to work I go, and they just fail to prosecute. Voter fraud was rampant in my county last season because people wanted to change the marijuana laws. So they voted in places that they didn't live. That was a felony. I was there. I was in on that investigation. I saw it. I talked to them. I know for a fact that's the truth. Secretary of State Alex Padilla, did he prosecute? No. Do you know why? Because he wants everyone to vote, even illegals. Even though it is a misdemeanor to register to vote where you don't live and don't have a habitation, a lawful habitation. There are provisions for homeless people. Homeless people can vote. That's fine and that's fair. But you cannot vote where you don't live. You can't register to vote where you don't live. That's a misdemeanor. And it is a felony to vote where you don't live. We had that going on in Siskiyou County all last election cycle. The prosecution, 0. We know what we're up against, folks. Here's the deal. You can fix this. You. No one is going to fix this for you. No one. We have one job. That job is to secure liberty for our posterity. Amen. What are you willing to do? What's it worth to you? What's your line in the sand? Show up for a meeting? Make a sandwich? Give $2? What is liberty worth to you? And what is it worth to you to have your children and grandchildren be able to remain in the place where they were born and get good jobs and raise families of their own with liberty? What is it worth to you to know that your property is secure? Because if you don't know what you own from one day to the next, how in the hell can you conduct your life? I don't. At my ranch, I don't know what I own from one day to the next. I owned the water last year, but I probably don't own it this year. How can I budget for my crop? Because my water right is a property right. It's deeded to my land. It's the same as a title to a car. And it predates the California Constitution. How can I budget for my crop when I literally don't know whether I'll own the same water this year that I owned last year, or whether I'll own any water this year? Because Fish and Game is coming after it. Well, here's what I told them. I said, if you want the water, bring your gun, because you're going to need it. Well, that's an easy statement to make. But if they come, that's my line in the sand. So what's yours? What are you willing to do to make this case work? Because it's going to be brought. We will prosecute it. We'll all do our best. The people who are doing the work to bring this case forward, the attorneys, the county committees, a lot of people in this room, there are too many to even name, have given their money, their time, their travel. They don't ask for anything. We don't accept donations personally. I don't take money for driving down here. No one does. Terry and Sally do a tremendous amount. They're traveling all the time, thousands of dollars in gas, days and days away from their home for liberty. This is up to you now. You know, my mom made me take a typing class. I hated her for it. And it was the smartest thing she ever did. I can now type 25 words a minute with only 7 mistakes. But I can do it with all 10 fingers. And I can remember sitting in that class and banging away and banging away and banging away with all those girls laughing at me as I typed, now is the time for all good men. Thank you.
We're gonna pass the microphone around.
Okay.
And that way, I'll walk over to you, and you can ask the question that way. That way, Mark can hear and everybody can hear. Go ahead.
Can plaintiffs like counties or cities be added to the case after it's filed?
Yes. In fact, we want that. That's a great question. Thank you for asking. Counties and cities and any elected official sitting, retired, after the fact, we want them to join the case in the interlocutory pleading because, as I said before, court is drama. So we want that bucket to keep overflowing. Oh, here's another one. Oh, here's another county. In fact, we're going to reach out to other states to join the lawsuit because guess what? When the Supreme Court talks, everybody has to listen. Can you imagine what would happen to this nation if every county in rural America had equal voice in their state senate? My gosh, we could put the train to liberty pretty close to back on the track, couldn't we? I hate to say that because I kind of get excited and I get, that's a little big, that's too big for me to think about. I'm kind of a smaller person than that, but wouldn't that be something? So yes, we want people to join after the fact, and we're encouraging it, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, my question has been all along, once we have achieved the state of Jefferson, will we hold new elections for local offices?
Well, no, the state of Jefferson is not intended to change your county. That's for you to change whenever you want to as citizens of Shasta County. So the answer to that is no. We will have a constitutional convention. The Constitution for the state of Jefferson, which Steve and his committee has largely written and been reviewing for a year now, and it's pretty darn good, I'll tell you. We're not ready to release that, but that's going to be just a starting point. We're not trying to tell you how things are going to be, but everyone needs a place to begin. So at the Constitutional Convention, we'll place that document out on the table, much like the Virginia plan, and then delegates from each and every county will tear it apart. Now here's the rub. County governments that joined the state of Jefferson will have a place themselves. In other words, they will have a delegate selected by their board of supervisors to be at that constitutional convention. Counties that refuse to join the state of Jefferson, their county committee will choose that representative, not the board of supervisors. So, and it's the same with the plaintiff agreement, and this is something I forgot to mention. When we talk about representation in the settlement of this court case, the only people that are going to be in the room are the plaintiffs. So if you want to have a say in what's going to happen as a government, you better sign on to the lawsuit or you're not going to get a say. The people will say it for you. So but no, your county is your county. We don't want to change how you live. We don't even know how you live. That's for you to do. And look, the state of Jefferson isn't the cure-all to a county government that you don't like. That's for you to take care of.
Thank you.
I have a
You're welcome.
question over here.
Yes.
You mentioned others, you're going after other states. I've heard that northern New York, state of New York is interested in this
Yeah, I know Scott
activity.
Strelzik very well. He's been behind that. And yeah, they're doing something different out there. But what we're looking for, we're not looking to change the character of the United States. What we're looking for is people to write amicus briefs or to join our lawsuit as plaintiffs because they don't have representation either. And so really, New York couldn't join as a plaintiff because this is a suit against the state of California, but they could write an amicus brief.
Over here.
Yes.
You mentioned others, you're going after other states. I've heard that northern New York, state of New York is interested in this
Yeah, I
kind
know
of
Scott
activity.
Strelzik very well. He's been behind that. And yeah, they're doing something different out there. But what we're looking for, we're not looking to change the character of the United States. What we're looking for is people to write amicus briefs or to join our lawsuit as plaintiffs because they don't have representation either. And so really, New York couldn't join as a plaintiff because this is a suit against the state of California, but they could write an amicus brief. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
How do you go about becoming a plaintiff, and what would be the requirements?
The plaintiffs list is already complete except for the counties. However, what you can do to have a say in the settlement is join your county's committee. In other words, if you're a participant in the Shasta County Jefferson Committee, because it's not, in other words, this is representation. That's what this whole thing is about. So your county committee is not going to say, well, we're not going to listen to the little folks, we're going to decide. They're going to have a meeting with you all, anyone who's a member of the committee, and they're going to say, okay, what do you think we should do? That's how the representation begins. So join the Shasta County Jefferson Declaration Committee and be active in it, and your voice will be heard.
Okay, what's required of, say, if a city chooses to join as a plaintiff?
All they have to do is they will sign a resolution, because in order to join a lawsuit, you have to ask for something.
Okay.
So all we ask is that the county, city, fire department, school board, whatever it is, sign a demand. They vote on a demand, a resolution or a demand letter. We, the city of Reading, declare that we've been harmed by lack of representation in the following ways, and we have no access to our representative, and therefore we demand that the Secretary of State, Alex Padilla, correct this, or we will join a lawsuit to correct it ourselves. And it's an open frame document. I have samples. I'll send it to anyone that wants one. And then you can change the wording to say what your county, what your city, fire department, school board wants it to say. And once you've said that and voted on it, you're in the plaintiff's list, and then we send you a very simple agreement. I agree to be represented by Gary Zerman and Scott Staffney in this lawsuit, blah, blah, blah. And also, my organization will be indemnified from any fees that may be assigned. And that's it. It's pretty simple. But we need that by the close of business next Tuesday, because this is going to get filed anyway. If you join after that, you won't be an original plaintiff. You'll be joining on the interlocutory pleading, which is okay. It's just, remember, we need that drama going in the door. We need that political weight on Tuesday. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, Mark. Say,
Hi.
Right after Donald Trump was elected, the morons down in Sacramento, Governor Brown, they decided they don't want to be under Donald Trump, so they're going to form their own country and secede from the United States. Do you think that will help us at all? That efforts for doing that? To do it?
That fellow moved back to Russia.
I know, but just the fact that they were all going to do that, don't you think that would help our cause?
Okay, well, here's the deal with that. Had the state of California, and we're still watching this, look, if the state of California does anything in any official capacity to condone or encourage sedition or insurrection, then we go to the United States Congress, just like West Virginia did, and we demand a state split because we don't want to be a party to insurrection and sedition. That's how West Virginia got away from Virginia. So yeah, we do have a plan for that.
Right here.
Yes, sir.
In this new proposed state, there are a lot of colleges and universities. Do we have to buy those from the state of California, and who's going to pay for that?
Okay, now this is, I want you to know that this is, and you can check, please don't be afraid to fact check me on this stuff, okay? I'm human, I do make mistakes, but this is a fact. When Tim Draper started the 6 states deal, he wanted to split California up in 6 states. Well, because he was a billionaire, he had a lot of luck with publicity and stuff. And one thing he got, which benefited us, we got a ton of free research out of that deal. So when the 6-state initiative was proposed and signatures were being gathered, the State Legislative Analyst's Office wrote a big analysis of what would happen to California if we split it up. And here is the opinion of Camilla Harris, then Attorney General of the state of California. Assets belonging to the new state, assets within the boundaries of the new state will belong to the new state after state split. So the answer to that is no, we won't have to buy anything from California, because remember, we were Californians paying taxes when that stuff got built. So even though we didn't have representation, we weren't asleep when they were spending the money. So anything that lies within the state of Jefferson that formerly belonged to the state of California, by the opinion of the state of California itself, will now belong to the state of Jefferson. And that goes for bridges, prisons, hospitals, colleges, elementary schools, and anything else the state wants to. That includes a share of Caltrans's equipment. That includes a share of the National Guard's equipment, armories, airplanes, stuff like that. So no, we will not have to buy that stuff. Now, here's the downside of it. When we split away from California, we're going to be responsible for a representative share of the debt too, because we didn't have representation, but we weren't asleep when they were spending the money. And that's why we want to stick with the one man, one vote deal. We're not trying to upset that apple cart because we only have 3% of the population of California. So guess how much of the debt we'd have to take with us? That's why this is affordable. We can not only do it, financially it works, and we will be, I don't know, I think it was Terry that said this first, our worst day in the state of Jefferson is going to be day number 1. That's going to be the last day we were Californians because there's no place to go but up from there. So we will have colleges and universities, and no, we won't have to buy them from California.
Question on your list.
Yes, ma'am.
Over here. So, couple of things. One is, can you name the county that is already the plaintiff that's in favor?
I can name it, but I hate to because I don't have
That's
the
fine.
permission of the chair to do it,
Yeah.
and I don't want them to be assaulted by, threats from the state of California. And believe me, they're not above that. I mean, we've already had a story today about how Jerry Brown gets wind of something, and then all of a sudden things start to happen that
That's
are bad.
fine.
So, but that will be news early next week, and you'll
And-
know the name of that county.
Cool, thank you. And
You're
then
welcome.
the second thing is, if we want to influence our city to join that list, like for Reading specifically, would it be as simple as sending emails to our city council, or what would
Well,
that look like to influence?
No, and everybody,
I'm a newbie.
Well, no, everybody's laughing because they've been before the Reading City Council about Jefferson before, and they're not particularly interested in supporting liberty for that for some reason. But no, what you would have to do is you'd have to go to your city council meeting, and you'd have to have all the documentation that I talked about. You'd have to have a copy of the complaint, a demand letter, a representation agreement, and you'd have to have like 6 of those, one for each person and one for your city attorney, and present those, and then they'd have to agendize it, talk about it, then bring it back at another meeting for a vote. And although once the case is filed, that's not too late, it's too late to get in before we file. So we have 2 counties that we're working on right now, and there may be a couple of cities we might be able to get by next Tuesday. But by the close of business Tuesday, that's it for the original plaintiffs list, and then we file it. Now, we do encourage you to still do that because we want additional plaintiffs during the interlocutories. And remember, if you want to say in how this turns out, you got to be there. And in order to be there, you got to be a plaintiff. So that's one good argument for them. Thank you for that. Was a good question. And I'd also like to personally thank all the people with brown hair for being here, because it is great. It is great to go to a meeting where there are people besides gray hairs. I don't know. Call me crazy, but
you had mentioned that the assets currently in the state of Jefferson would then belong to the state of Jefferson.
that's correct.
Do we have a remedy of going about monetarily being compensated for these items that we are now going to be overtaking that have been neglected by the state of California?
Well,
for instance, we would be inheriting the Orville Dam, which has some serious issues.
I get you on that one. The answer to that is not no. It isn't yes, but isn't no. Remember when West Virginia split away from Virginia, there was a matter of, I think it was $35 million in debt. And there was a lot of funny business going on, and the story takes hours, and I'll boil it down. So what they did was the state of Virginia wanted the money now because they were broke from the Civil War. It wasn't good. So they sold a bunch of bonds at a really exorbitant interest rate, and then they tried to hang that debt on West Virginia, saying, well, you owe the money because you didn't pay us on time. Well, what they did was they spent 50 years in court, and it ended up in the Supreme Court, and it was a case called West Virginia versus Virginia. And the state of Virginia argued that, well, West Virginia owes us every nickel that we claim, and because we say so, and because we want it, and because we're going to be really broke if we don't get it. And the state of West Virginia said, we agree that we owe our portion of the original $35 million. However, the malfeasance, corruption, and monkey shines on behalf of the state of Virginia in the ensuing years are not our responsibility, and we should not have to compensate for those. And the court found literally that West Virginia was responsible for the debt, however, no more. They settled on $7 million, and the court even said, and it is beneath this court to discuss the terms of this agreement. You go in the back room and figure out the interest and stuff for yourself. So yeah, one of our jobs in the Committee of Reconciliation, which is how you split a state, you have committees set up on both sides, and by the way, each county will be a participant in that, and county governments or city governments that have signed on will be part of that, and if they haven't, their county committee will do it for them, and we are going to fight like tigers to not have to pay the bill for the corruption and crookedness of the state of California, and even if it takes 50 years, it'll be time well spent, and West Virginia is proof of that. Yes.
I'm involved in another lawsuit, and you want drama. What tore down the bad guys and got it into the courts was the bloggers.
Was what?
It was bloggers.
Yeah.
And it was, people, if you're involved in a blog, I just going to say, encourage you to stir the pot. Ask your people that you follow to talk about it, good or bad.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Right.
Because the bad causes the good to spring up and fight.
Well, you're not only right about that, but that's a tremendous point in the sense that it is the people that can correct this. And yeah. I'm not a member of social media because in my line of work it isn't good, But it is important that everybody light her up, folks. I mean, here's your chance. You can give the politicians in Sacramento literally the devil if you want to, and I wish you'd start. Don't wait. Start now, because this lawsuit will be filed, and it will be up to us to get that 3-judge panel, and no one is going to save us. Yeah. If we don't do it, nobody will. So yeah, light them up. Thank you. Great question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, what happens if we win in the Supreme Court and California just remains silent and does nothing? Do we have any teeth, or how do we go about that?
Yes, we do have teeth. We have a set of teeth that has only been used once in this nation. I hate to outline it too directly because it's kind of our ace in the hole, but we have a set of teeth that California would be absolutely powerless to ignore. It's only been done once, but yes, that is a part of our strategy.
Good.
And they would not be able to escape the wrath of this particular political function, shall we say. Now, once the complaint has been filed, I'll come back and tell you what that is, because once the complaint's been filed, it'll be public information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If say the counties up here voted against something, like, I'm not sure that we voted for the train.
You didn't?
Would we be responsible for paying, or because we didn't vote for it, would we get out of it?
No, and see, that was another thing that was part of West Virginia versus Virginia. I mean, those are arguments that have yet to be made. And what West Virginia said, yeah, okay, that's fine, we're not paying it, and you can't make us. And 50 years later, they came to a settlement. So yeah, the state of California can make a lot of statements. Well, you're on the hook for this, and you're on the hook for your portion of climate change over the next 25 years, and you're on the hook for this, that, and the other thing. But as a sovereign state, and here's the crux of this, and that I'm glad you asked that, because this is a really important concept. It's called the equal footing doctrine. And it was Hagan versus Pollard-Lessee in 1849 when Alabama joined the Union. And there was an interesting statement made because the federal government said, sure, Alabama, you can be a state, but we're going to keep the tidelands, the fishing rights, the intercoastal waterways, and some other stuff that's really worth a lot more money, and we don't want you to have it. And the Supreme Court said, no, fellas, that ain't going to happen, because when a state joins the Union, it joins the Union with equal footing to the, and here's the best part, to the original 13. And that is part of the Enabling Act, the legislation that creates each and every state since Alabama. Part of that legislation is, and this state, and it's part of the California's Enabling Act, and I have a copy of that. This state joins the Union with equal footing to the original 13. And John Adams and Thomas Jefferson both argued in the Federalist, and they said, why would anyone want to join the Union on a second tier? Why would anyone want to be lesser states than the original 13? Because the original intent was the 13 colonies get the goodies, and the western states, well, they can join, but we're going to tax some stuff out of them, and you know, we don't want them to be quite as equal as we are. Well, the Supreme Court said no to that. And so when we join the Union with equal footing to the original 13, and what does the Declaration of Independence tell us? States formed the United States. And when these former 13 colonies become independent states equal to any state in the world, the state of California will have no power to tell us to do anything. And that's what state sovereignty is. It is interposition between the people of the state of Jefferson and anyone who would try to take our liberty. That's the whole point, liberty. Without that, the rest of it doesn't even matter. Amen, brother. Yes, sir.
Right here.
Oh, ma'am, I'm sorry. Come get the mic. Yeah, go ahead.
I talked to my friends and talked about state of Jefferson, and we're going to break off and everybody, you know, and all this, because I come to the meetings and know about it. But they keep saying, oh no, there's no way it'll ever happen.
Yeah.
Because number one, we don't have any money. How are we going to take care of ourselves? We don't have any money.
Yeah. Well, you know, look at it this way. Next time they say that, say this to them. Siskiyou County, I know that because I live there, used to be considered the jewel of California. We had the best schools, we had vibrant communities, we were profitable, our communities were growing, we had wealth in tremendous abundance. When you look around you in the North State, all you can see is money. And it's the kind of money that's growing every single day. It's flowing through our state every single day. It's under the ground in our state. Now, responsible use of resource. And here's another thing. Holt versus U.S. Bank tells us that maybe everything's on the table. Because guess what a state owns? A state may not own a federally controlled river, but they own the ground underneath it. Isn't that funny how that works? And so as an acre foot of water passes through the state of Jefferson, federally, we may not have any claim to that water. But shouldn't there be a road tax for water that we're not allowed to use that's going to Southern California? It's called a transfer fee. Our state is wealthy beyond measure, and Siskiyou County proved that. Del Norte County has the highest value timber in the nation. It's almost all Doug fir. We only harvest right now because of the restrictions and regulations and laws placed upon us by the tyrannists down south. We harvest less than 4% of that. In my county 3 years ago, 2 billion board feet of marketable timber burned to the ground because the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, we call them CalPile for short, said that you can't harvest those trees. And they even said now, well, we will allow you to harvest 3% of the dead timber. And even 3% of the timber, logging trucks are rolling on Highway 96. People have jobs. Another mill is opening. That's 3%. Besides that, what's the carbon footprint of a catastrophic wildfire anyway? It's more than all the cars in California running year-round. Yeah, so we have money. It's not that we're poor. We have been impoverished by the poor judgment and political processes of the state of California. We have the money. All we got to do is take control and start using it. Liberty. That's what we need. Yes, sir.
My question's a bit different. I don't have information on it, but I have a desire to really
I didn't
see this
do it
taken
unless
care
somebody
of.
saw me.
Okay. Here's my question. The brown hairs, the 40 and under, gender groups, racial groups, we don't see that great diversity in these gatherings.
I don't know what to say about that.
I know. Is there anybody that has a plan to reach them and rally, say, you know, the college and career people are pretty radical when they get for something.
Well, sure. You know, liberty's
amazing.
pretty infectious, quite frankly. I mean, you know, you ever heard the saying, if you build it, they will come? You build a state with liberty, and you know what our biggest problem is going to be? Managing growth. It's going to be managing growth. You know, I've been told by people from Germany and Japan, I've been told by people from Europe repeatedly, if you do this, first of all, tourism alone will take care of your state for the next 50 years, but how are you going to manage all the people that want to come there and enjoy liberty? Well, look at it this way. Do people move to a place because it's the worst place they ever saw? I mean, you know, no. So we won't have any problem with diversity, and we won't have any problem with those things. And you know what? I'm a pilot. I spent my life flying all over the world. I have friends in 150 countries. I have friends that are more colors than all the colors in this room. And some of them are great people, and some of them are just people like me. But the point is, this has nothing to do with diversity. This has to do with liberty. And with liberty, that covers everybody. I mean, liberty doesn't have a boundary. Liberty doesn't have a screening process. Liberty doesn't have a color it likes better one than the other. Liberty is liberty for everybody. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't be part of this if it wasn't that way. Now, can I tell people to come here that won't come here? No. Do I want to? No. I mean, if someone doesn't want liberty, I don't want to waste my time talking to them. So that's something they need to stumble into. And here's another part of this, personal responsibility. I'm not everybody's nanny. I'm not everybody's grandpa. If people don't want to come and hear about liberty, that's their choice. But we're going ahead anyway. And unfortunately, they'll get to share in that liberty, and I'm good with that too.
Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering how we can reach the young people. That's the main thing that I'm burning for.
Well, I think we did. I think we did pretty good tonight. I mean, hopefully they'll tell their friends.
One thing that we can add to that, and Mark will attest to this, the very first town hall we ever did was put on by a 24-year-old woman.
Yeah.
And there were 5 speakers. They were all 28 and under.
And that's where this lady with the blog idea, because
right.
Millennials, they do stuff on the computer. Now, I don't know how to reach them because I have a hard time turning mine on with consistency, but there are people in our groups that do, and they are reaching them. I guess we have tens of thousands of Facebook followers to hear what people tell me. So, you know. Anyone else?
Mark, quick question. When you're going to file, which is kind of anticlimactic as far as the process.
It's done electronically these days.
Yeah, so it's done by the attorneys. They file the paperwork in the claim, then it's done. But then when we go to serve...
Oh, God, I'm glad you brought that up.
We need to serve, and we need some friends to hang out with us when we go to serve.
Thank you for reminding me of that, and I apologize for forgetting. These things are filed electronically, but we're going to serve the Secretary of State individually, and I'm going to serve a notice to Governor Brown as well. And here's what I need, and I'm serious about this. I'm dead serious. This is going to sound funny, but I mean it. I need 10,000 of my best friends to go with me. That's weight in the bucket. I need every county in the state of Jefferson to get 500 people to Sacramento on a date we will publicize so that we can all participate in our first step toward liberty. And that 500 people in Shasta County shouldn't be a big deal. 500 people in Lassen County might be tough. So maybe we can get 700 from Shasta and only 300 from Lassen. Look, even if we showed up with 4,000 people, that would be the biggest rally they've ever seen in Sacramento. If they won't let us on the lawn, we will all drive around the Capitol building with Jefferson flags hanging out the window until they get the point that we are never going to quit and we are never going to go away. I'll tell you, one thing I learned in Vietnam is if you quit, you're dead. Don't you ever quit, and we are never going to quit until we've achieved liberty. So I need 10,000 people, and here's another thing. I don't want people to have to pay for their bus ride unless they can afford it. So we're going to try to raise money. If we can get, 10 buses for each county with 50 people in them?
Right, and we also have Lassen Transit from Tehama County.
Yeah.
They've offered to use their buses, however many they have.
Right.
There you go. Down. But the big thing is making sure we coordinate the date so we can get on their books.
So the minute I know a filing date and a calendar for the case, then we will publicize a rally date based on what will work for what we hope is the most amount of people. And we are going to go to Sacramento and we're going to serve a couple of papers. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and also everybody should carpool. And when you're riding the buses, the carpool, you get to make new friends.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be sitting beside each other here, but when you're on the bus for 2.5 hours down and 2.5 hours back, you make some friends. And when we served last January, a year ago January, when we went down there and did the Declaration Day, a lot of people got to make new friends. And I heard that a lot from different people from different counties.
And we also took the opportunity to go in the building in Sacramento and knock on doors and say, why don't you support liberty?
Yeah, and if
that was kind of fun.
You wear your colors. You know, if you're dressed like Doyle, when you get there, they get the message.
Yeah. If you're dressed like me, they say, please use the back door.
There we go.
You know. Well, that's part of that equal footing doctrine, isn't it? Yeah.
This is kind of for the folks in the room. If you watch the demographic, you watch alternative news, you'll find out right now in France, the biggest supporters of Marine Le Pen is what they call Generation Z. That's the young people, and I mean the 16 to 25-year-olds. The same thing's happening in this country because, frankly, they see a dead end unless something changes. They're going to be living in their mama's basement playing video games the rest of their life because there are no opportunities because they've killed it. It's been killed intentionally. So there's a strike back worldwide. I don't care if it's Canada, France, here, doesn't matter. I don't like to hit categories like that, but it's Generation Z.
I've been to 6 wars for the United States government in airplanes, and I can tell you right now, liberty will find the light. And what we want to do is we want to do that peacefully because it will find the light otherwise, and we don't want that. We want to do this while we can do it in court, and we can.
You know, it actually is working because when you talk to young people today, and I talk to a lot of them, they will tell you they don't ever expect to draw a penny of Social Security.
Social Security, you know, I hate to say this, and this is probably going to rub people the wrong way. And believe me, I want my money back the government's been stealing from me all of my life, but Social Security ain't in the Constitution. That's something that came later. I want liberty. If I had to give up the money and die penniless for liberty, sign me up right now. I would rather die in a cardboard box under a freeway overpass with liberty than rich without it. Yeah, that's true, but I want to remind you of something that George Washington said. He said the difference between the American Christian and anyone else on earth is this. The American would rather die on his feet than live on his knees. I am not a dog chained to my master's table waiting for him to flick the scrap of Social Security off. I'll figure it out. I can make that money picking up pop bottles by the side of the road. And I would rather do that than sacrifice my liberty.
I've got 2 questions. What's going to happen to my Proposition 13? Because
it won't change.
My taxes are predicated on when I built the house in the 80s.
It won't change.
And if it's assessed now
at
its value, it's going to be about three times higher than it was then.
It won't change. 1%. It won't change.
And the second question is, what are you going to do with the Endangered Species Act? Because that's shut down most of the forests in California.
State sovereignty. That's what we're going to do with it. State sovereignty, the equal footing doctrine, responsible resource use. That's what we'll do with it. I'm just going to leave you with one thought, and then I'm done, I swear. Honest, I mean it this time. John Adams and gosh, I forget now who was with him. Anyway, John Hancock. John Hancock and John Adams were sitting around in Concord, and they were sitting with Pastor Jonas Clark the night before the British came. And John Hancock was a little bit scared. You know, he said, God, Pastor, we know that the British Brigade is coming, and they're 700 of the most mightily armed troops that the world has ever known, and they're coming for us. And he goes, are your people okay with this? Can your people handle this? And Clark said to John Hancock, he said, I've been training my men for this day all their lives. Liberty. Thank you.